Hi, I'm Mike Field.
I'm Pat Whalen.
Pat is a lifelong comic book geek.
And Mike is a filmmaker and storyteller.
So naturally, a bulk of our conversations surround the world of the Marvel movies. Some consider the MCU one of the greatest achievements in modern-day filmmaking, and others just think they're comic book movies. Each episode will tackle one film and discuss the differences between the comic book and what's on screen. We'll explore the growth of the Marvel Cinematic Universe from its inception to present day and beyond, and have a little fun along the way. You may not have asked for it, you certainly don't need it, but you'll be happy we're here. We think. This is yet another MCU podcast. All right, welcome back. This is episode 4 of yet another MCU podcast. How you doing, Pat?
I'm good. You got the name right this time.
I was proud of myself. There was a moment right before I was going to say MCU where I was like, Marvel, no, MCU podcast. So if you can tell by my somber tone, we are about to talk about Thor.
The Shakespearean drama.
Yes,
of the MCU.
Absolutely. Which makes sense. It's directed by Kenneth Branagh. I guess I'll just run through real quick some fact stuff and then we'll get right into them. We'll get into the movie. As you know, we do the movie. We break down the differences between the movie and the comic. And then we talk about its role in the MCU and I guess stuff that's in the movie that foreshadows future movies and stuff like that. And like last episode when we talked about Iron Man 2, that was the first time where the third part of our little podcast, the MCU Universe podcast part, really kind of took shape because it started doing more stuff. So obviously that carries forward into Thor, which was released on May 6, 2011. It was 115 minutes. It's rated PG-13, had a production budget of $150 million. I can't remember off the top of my head if that's more than Iron Man 2. Do you remember?
Don't remember.
Okay. I'm curious to track if like how the production budgets increase. Yeah. They keep going up or whatnot. Its opening weekend at $65 million. Domestically, 181 million. Worldwide, 449 million. So again, another big hit for Marvel and for Kevin Feige and I guess not Disney at the time. This is the last Paramount one?
No, I think Captain America First Avenger. Okay. I think Avengers is the last Paramount one.
You might be right.
And then in phase 2. So the deal was made with Disney shortly before Iron Man 2 came out. I think Paramount had a 6-movie deal. Mm-hmm. So that's Iron Man, Hulk, Iron Man 2, Thor, Captain America, and the first Avenger movie. But the Avengers. And
the Avengers,
and then I think phase 2 is where it kicks off with the Disney movies.
Okay, right.
We could double check that.
Hey, whatever. We got plenty of time, plenty of episodes, plenty of bonus episodes,
18 more movies
and counting. So Thor is directed by Kenneth Branagh. People who do not know who Kenneth Branagh is, he's a famous actor, known for his Shakespearean roles, but he's also he was more recently in the remake of The Murder of the Orient Express. Yes. He played Poirot, but actually there's
doing a sequel. I just saw the other day.
Yes, absolutely. Because I actually liked the remake. I was into it, and I liked the time period and the setting and all that stuff. So, and he played a good Poirot, so I thought that was really cool. But he directs a lot of stuff. And obviously he directed Thor, written by Ashley Miller. He wrote X-Men First Class. I believe he either wrote it with Zach Stentz or Zach Stentz. I think he did write it with Zach Stentz because I have the same credit for Zach Stentz, who's also a writer here. And Don Payne, I think, was brought in maybe. I'm not sure how I should have really paid attention to how the writing shaped out there. But Don Payne, the only credit I have it here because it deals with the superheroes. My superhero ex-girlfriend, though.
Was it Paul Rudd?
No, that was Uma Thurman and not Owen Wilson, his brother.
Oh, Luke Wilson. Oh,
yes.
okay. Yeah. That's why I thought it was Paul Rudd.
Music by Patrick Doyle. Cinematography by Harris, butchering this name, Zambarlocus. He did Batman Begins, which I thought was interesting.
Oh,
yeah.
That's weird.
Because Batman Begins is really, has a dark, somber tone to it.
Well, and Thor does have that. It flips between that dark, somber Shakespearean tone and then the earthly stuff.
It's kind of, we talk about when they're on Asgard compared to New Mexico.
Yeah. Land of Dreams.
And I already told you that we already know Kevin Feige produced. I mean, I don't know. I should probably have to say that name because you probably all know that already. Thor is played by Chris Hemsworth. Jane is Natalie Portman. Loki played by Tom Hiddleston. Hiddleston, excuse me. Anthony Hopkins plays Odin. Stellan Skarsgård is Eric Selvig. Kat Dennings is Darcy Lewis. Clark Gregg is Agent Coulson, who has returned. Idris Elba as Heimdall. Rene Russo as Frigga.
Yeah.
Okay. And then the only other credit I have here, we now see the introduction of Maximiliano Hernandez as Jasper Sitwell.
Yes, another agent of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Right. Well, agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. who ended up becoming
an agent of Hydra.
Right. And you only find that out in the Captain America
Winter Soldier.
Okay.
So he appears in a couple of those Marvel one-shots.
I really should watch those. I really should try to find those.
I think they're all on YouTube.
Yeah. Okay, yeah.
Or if you have the DVDs, the original DVDs from the films, I believe they're on the special features.
We'll get into like our viewing notes of Thor. I guess, do you want to give like a quick breakdown of what this movie's synopsis is? I mean, I can just upload a synopsis and read it verbatim if you like, but I figure you want to just kind of give a quick kind of,
Yeah. Thor, the son of Odin, Thor Odinson.
He's a real jerk.
He is a real jerk. He was raised to be the king of Asgard, the mystical land of the Asgardians of the Norse mythology. He's ready to assume his throne, but through an attack by an ancient evil force, he does something brash, and as a result, his father Odin sends him down to Earth to presumably learn humility or just get him out of his sight.
He's annoyed, yeah.
Yeah. So while he's on Earth, he meets Jane Foster and a handful of Earthlings, and they help him, realize the connection between Earth and Asgard and science and magic. On the other side, you have Loki, his half-brother. We discover it's his half-brother. He's dealing with some evil machinations behind the scenes to assume the role of Asgard now that his brother is out of the picture. And I guess
that's it. There are a lot of similarities on purpose with this movie. Branagh wanted to be a little bit more like Henry V.
Yeah.
The other thing I wanted to really quickly talk about is maybe we could save this for later, but I'll say it anyways. It's not just this is based on comics, like, you know what I mean? Like it's almost like a mix of Norse mythology and the comics, right? Which I found is interesting. So going through some of the facts and the notes, and I always send you an email or text with just a list of kind of like comic questions I have for Pat, so he's prepared. I don't surprise him. I had to like decipher, like, okay, wait a minute, that's not really part of that. That's more Norse mythology. I know they probably co-opted it in the comic, and we can get to that later.
Yeah.
But this is one of the movies that wasn't just solely one source material content. Was what I'm belaboring to say here. Right off the top, first time I walked into the door when we were setting up our equipment to record this, I said to Pat, nothing happens in this movie.
Yeah. I was going to ask, because you teased our listeners last week that you were not a fan.
I am not a fan.
Are you still not a fan?
I'm not.
That's a no, ladies and gentlemen.
Well, because my other friend, Mike Butler from Forgotten Cinema Podcast that I do, he told me that, like, oh, you're just going to hate on Marvel movies. And it's like, that's not fair. I don't hate on them. I mean, I don't love them as much as a lot of other people, but I still, it's still an endeavor to put these together, obviously. Yeah. There's, like I said, this whole movie to me, whereas the Iron Man and Incredible Hulk and Iron Man 2 to some extent those are personal journeys. And I know that this is probably more of a personal journey, but like nothing happens in this movie. There's the fight in the beginning and there's a fight at the end, and there's nothing in between. Like one of my favorite notes is how he, at the end, he figures out like he's not going to go back to Asgard. He's stuck on Earth forever. Yep. He's up on the roof with Jane. They fall asleep. The next morning he's making eggs, and it's like he made eggs. He's better now.
He's domesticated.
Thor's learned his lesson. He made scrambled eggs.
He dealt with the fact that he will never see his other loved ones again.
Yeah.
By making scrambled eggs. And it was one night where we see in the later Endgame and Thor movies where dude's depressed for a long time.
And he's gained weight.
Yeah, he's gained weight where like that affects him so much. But now in this one where he realizes he's never going to be able to go home again.
Right.
I think at this time he believes Odin to be dead, his father to be dead. And so he falls asleep on the roof with Jane, wakes up and he's domesticated. And he's like, well, I'm going to live on Earth now.
Eggs, anyone?
I'm here on Earth. Cool.
I mean, I think this would have benefited with a little bit more of stuff going on in between. It seems like they have his group of not his group of friends, but his warriors.
His Asgardian friends,
right?
Like it basically has his college friends,
right?
And his New Earth friends.
But like they're set up to be this hardcore fighting group. And you see that in the beginning when they just basically go to that land and just start murdering people. What are they're called? What are because they keep calling them Jotunheim. That's where they're
giants.
going. Okay.
Yeah.
So they just go there and just like slaughter everybody. And but that's the only time you see them ever kind of fight.
Right. And I think they maybe take a more corrective action in Thor 2 because they open up with a big fight. So it's him and Sif and the Warriors 3 putting down some type of rebellion or something. So maybe they want to show a little bit more of that relationship. They learned a lesson from this one. I don't know.
You think?
Who knows?
How many times have you seen Thor?
It doesn't.
Okay, so did it change for you at all, or has it changed from the first time to the last, good or bad?
I mean, so I actually hadn't seen it in a while prior to us, watching it for this, and so when I was going into it, I'm like, no, I really enjoy this. I thought it was a fun fish out of water comedy. I thought there was more action in it. The fish out of water thing still holds. I think there's some really good moments where he's calling Agent Coulson son of Cole.
Okay.
Thought
that's great. That's one line, dude.
Yeah, it's one line. But you get the Ren Fair, when the Ren Fair's in town and stuff. But yeah, there's not. I mean, I think I texted you at one point. I was like, there's not a lot of Thor in this Thor movie. There's even, there's not a lot of Chris Hemsworth in this Thor movie. He's trying to tell a Shakespearean drama.
Yeah.
And so you have all those scenes on Asgard with Loki and the mother and him trying to usurp the role. So get the brother out of the picture. Branagh's doing what Branagh does, and that's try to tell Shakespeare. I'm half surprised he didn't cast himself as Odin.
Branagh?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't see anything in the notes that he was thinking about doing.
I don't think
that.
he was, but just given his track record in his other Shakespearean films, whether it's Henry V, that's Much Ado About Nothing, Hamlet. I mean, he's in.
Well, I know that Hiddleston got Loki's role because he worked with Branagh previously on the Wallander TV series, where Wallander's like a private detective. It takes place in Norway or Sweden. I think Sweden. Yeah. I've watched it. It's really good. It's really depressing, and so
like any of those detective shows are there?
Pretty much. Yeah, a lot of the Norwegian detective shows are really dark. And Hiddleston was on that show with him, but then they were also doing a play together when Branagh got the director's role, and so I think and then months later he got the part. So good for him. Right place, right time.
I think he did initially. I think you could find the footage online, but he initially auditioned for Thor.
I think they had a bunch of people auditioning for Thor. Yeah, absolutely.
And it could be Chris Hemsworth was essentially unknown at the time, and that could be why they limited his.
Well, I think
his on-screen role.
I think it also helped that he played Kirk's father in the new Star Trek, and that everyone was like, "Wow, he was really good." And I think that's what helped him. And he was really good.
He was really good.
That's a really good opening. This was the first 3D MCU movie. I'll tell you that.
They didn't film it in 3D, right?
Well, no. They honestly, a lot of the 3D movies now, they don't film in 3D. They just like, let's put it out in 3D. And they don't even release anything in 3D anymore.
I was going to say, are there a lot of 3D still released?
I think they've all had some 3D version throughout.
Pushing it harder. I know pushing it harder. Like I when Avengers came out, that's the one we saw in theaters. Any
big movie, in MCU is always going to be a big tentpole movie. Is going to have a 3D version.
Yeah.
I'm sure the thought process is, why not? I mean, we've got 5 screens, so might as well just make one of them 3D and see what happens. My guess my biggest thing is just that it is another personal journey for another character that you're introduced to, because you don't see him in any of the movies. He's just like all these movies. Granted, there are end credit scenes to connect with Iron Man with Tony Stark for Incredible Hulk, and then in Iron Man 2, what do they do? I forgot.
Iron Man 2 is for this one.
Right.
Where the hammer. The hammer drops into New Mexico.
Thor. You never met him yet. He's not popped in.
And that's just strictly Coulson showing up in the desert.
Right, exactly. Coulson's that connective tissue. So it is more like you need to introduce him. You need to show that he's a real jerk and a real a-hole in the beginning, that he is arrogant. And obviously Odin gets a little extreme when he banishes him, but that's fine.
A little bit.
Yeah.
Slightly.
Yeah. So how about this? Do you buy the relationship with Jane and him and Thor?
When I saw them kiss at the end, I knew it was coming. I didn't buy the kiss. I like the relationship that they had, especially as they built it up for the scene on the roof. I thought that was their big final, climactic scene between the two of them. Thor isn't as maybe stupid as his brashness would allow him, allow us to believe. So he's able to like connect with her on that, science is magic. He's sharing with her his details. It's effectively, if she's able to use that research, change her career and change her life. So he's not looking for anything out of it. He's, this woman has taken him in, but it's more, this is who I am. This is where I'm from. I'm happy to talk about my past. I miss my home. So to me, I think that was the biggest scene in this personal film. But at the kiss at the end, I think is just Jane and Thor are supposed to be together. Let's have them kiss. Let's have him disappear. I get it if maybe he gives her a look and they hug or do something. But again, it's a movie. You need something more dynamic, where if he goes to Asgard and Loki is the one that knows, it's like, no, you like her, you love her. You're never going to get her back. And maybe Thor didn't get to kiss her. Maybe he didn't get to offer that final goodbye. And then you kind of see some of that.
Well, I think they try to have that too at the end when he obviously destroys the Bifrost, the bridge, and like he's giving her up, and I think they're trying to like lead to the next movie, and oh my god, will they see her again, that kind of stuff. I guess they also kind of set up in this movie his disregard or his lack of seeing how Loki is not good. He has like such a blind spot to Loki that starts in this movie. I mean, because all this stuff is happening, and yet your brother is the guy who's great at magic, and you don't ever believe that he has ulterior motives to take the throne or to do anything, or like and that carries out throughout all the way up until the last movie that we just saw, the Endgame.
Why have you done this?
To prove to Father that I am a worthy son. When he wakes, I will have saved his life. I will have destroyed that race of monsters, and I will be true heir to the throne.
You can't kill an entire race.
Why not?
I think we should jump into the differences, because there's just so much stuff in there, and we'll probably want to get to all of it. But before we do that, I just want to say this is also the last Marvel movie to be shot on 35 millimeter. After this, they go all digital. I assume that's what that means. So I thought that was interesting as well, which makes sense because we are transitioning. It's only 9 years ago.
Right. Yeah. Maybe from an aesthetic point of view, I would have thought that Captain America, they would have done that for, given the time frame and the period piece.
Kenneth Branagh is probably a little bit more old school than the Russo brothers, right? They did Captain America, right?
No, Joe Johnston did.
I take it back.
No, the Russo brothers didn't come in until Winter Soldier.
Okay, so Joe Johnston. I'm surprised Joe Johnston didn't do, because he's a film guy too.
Yeah, he's an old school journeyman type guy.
Well, maybe this note is wrong when I went to Captain America and I go, hey, Captain America was the last film shot. All right.
So I know I could be wrong. I just would have thought from an aesthetic point of view. It could just be a Marvel edict that came down.
These are facts I gather on the internet. That doesn't mean they're right. I can pretend that they're right, but I'm not going to be that kind of. I'm not going to be Thor here and be arrogant to think that these are correct. Okay, my first note about the differences between the comic and the movie is, tell me who Dr. Donald Blake is.
Yes.
Because this movie has no kind of deal with any kind of alternate pseudonyms or, you know what I mean? And then that was thrown in there when they rips the name tag off. I'm like, that's something. So tell me who Dr. Donald Blake is.
Okay. So I'm going to back up real quick and just give somebody. Donald Blake is coming. First, just give you, Thor was introduced and created by Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, Larry Lieber in Journey into Mystery, number 83. So he predated Iron Man by about 9 months and came in after Hulk. So you see that whole group of guys between Kirby, Lee, John Romita, Steve Ditko. They're all really starting to formulate the Marvel Universe. In this respect, Kirby had started to develop. This is really his character, his world. He really started to develop the world of Asgard and back matter stories in the early comics. That's all. Quick intro. Donald Blake was the secret identity of Thor Odinson when he gets sent to Earth by Odin.
When he gets banished?
When he gets banished. Okay. So the difference here is where in the film, Thor gets sent down to Earth. People think he has a concussion. People think he's out of his mind, but he's not. He knows he's Thor. He knows, he belongs in Asgard. In the comics, when Odin banishes Thor, he puts his mind into the body of this Dr. Donald Blake, who's a medical student and eventually later a doctor. Jane Foster is his nurse and an assistant. So it actually took him months and months to realize that he was Thor. So he gets this message essentially, and he travels to a cave in Norway, Thor's alleged birthplace. And that's where he recalls that he is he is Thor. So he had been on Earth for a while before the transformation happened.
And he's in a different body. He doesn't even look like.
No, he's skinny and he's crippled. So he's kind of got that like initial Steve Rogers feel to him.
Okay.
So he walks with this, it's a magical stick that he has. And when he touches it and smashes it into the ground, that's when it transforms into Thor's magical hammer, Mjolnir. And that's when he transforms into Thor.
Interesting. I didn't realize it was that kind of He-Man transition.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess that would be, he has the power.
Or Lion-O from the Thundercats. What? That's that.
Oh, you're not wrong.
Why are you laughing?
I mean, I guess maybe him shouting thunder, thunder, thunder would be better for Thor than it would be for Lion-O.
But he yells Thundercats ho. I mean, everyone knows that.
I know.
Okay, so the hammer, I read here that, and I said this to you, the hammer being casted out is from Fantastic Four number 536. You can, I guess, tell me what that's about a little bit. And it was to Oklahoma, not to New Mexico. There's some kind of apocalyptic event on Asgard, whatever. Because I'm curious now that I didn't realize that. I just thought Thor threw on glasses and he says, "Hey, I'm Dr. Donald Blake." I didn't realize that he was put in somebody's body.
Yeah, so he's put in Blake's body. Eventually, they split, and Blake, so there's stories where initially it was Blake was his own character that Odin just put Thor's consciousness
kind of like being
into.
John Malkovich when he walks through to go through the door and you're inside Malkovich. Okay.
And then on the other, there was a retcon to that in that Donald Blake was just a pure creation by Odin. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't even a real person up until Odin did some magic stuff.
Mm-hmm. I guess my question is, after Thor separates himself from Donald Blake or whatever,
he's just Thor.
Is that okay? And that's it. He's just Thor.
There's another time where he's another character, or he's another human.
Okay, so that's really just kind of like in the genesis of the comic where that came from. Okay, and that makes sense.
And so I mean, you brought it up. There's no secret identity in this, but there's no secret identity in the MCU.
No, I know. There was until they outed Spider-Man in the last one. So yes,
that was really the only one.
Right.
Because Iron Man at the end of the movie, he says, "I'm Tony Stark. I'm Iron Man."
Black Panther.
Yeah.
He's not. He's known as like the leader of that nation, but they don't normally. You know what I mean?
But the government, Civil War, when they arrest him after the street race, street chase, they take off the mask and it's T'Challa.
True.
True. He's not like. There's not a lot of.
They don't really care too much.
They don't care.
Right.
Yeah. And I think Kevin Feige had even been. There was an interview that came out shortly after Endgame when he was kind of looking back on the universe, where he said, we didn't want to deal with the whole secret identity thing. And for Spider-Man, it makes sense because that's such a crucial part of his character and the age wise. But then they outed him again. So it doesn't, nobody cares.
They went, whatever. I'm not either anti that decision or pro that decision. No. It's just, okay, that's the decision. Let's move forward. I mean, did you look up this Fantastic Four thing about the hammer being casted out?
Yeah, so they did go to Oklahoma. There's a writer, J. Michael Straczynski. He received a writing credit on this film.
Oh, okay.
He had written Thor in the late 2000s. So the thing with Thor is the Asgards are always dying and being reborn. Mm-hmm. So they're coming back. There's the constant cycle of Ragnarok. So there's always that, Thor's not here for now. And then he comes back and then he's not here. And then, at one point after the destruction of Asgard, Thor settles into Oklahoma or just outside Oklahoma City. So, and that's with a new Asgard. So you see kind of that new Asgard take in Endgame. Mm-hmm. But here
it's on Earth though.
It's on Earth. And this is the same thing. Like this is on Earth. And this is, it has a lot of that same fish out of water type moments, but he's, and the reason that J. Michael wanted to do that was to give a hero outside of New York. So, send it down into Oklahoma provides that new look for what, because Thor had initially been a hero in New York, Spider-Man, Hulk, Fantastic Four, Iron Man to some extent, like all these guys. I don't know how much I work in New York. There's not that much crime.
Well, that's like when talked about the Daredevil show on Netflix.
Oh, right. I mean, Daredevil, right. Luke Cage, all that.
But he talks about
much crime.
But I always like when he talks about this is my city, Hell's Kitchen. It's like Hell's Kitchen is a couple blocks.
Right.
I mean, it's really not that big.
No,
so.
it stretches from like maybe 50th down to
I lived in it.
27.
I lived in Hell's Kitchen for 2 months. Trust me.
City.
Exactly. That's always made me laugh. And we know that because we live on the East Coast and we go to the city. But it's like people don't know that.
No,
and it's like, come on, you're selling a bill of goods here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, what is it? It's maybe 20 blocks.
Maybe
20 blocks and only on the west side.
Yeah.
It's not a city.
So I also saw here that Thor and Hercules are best friends.
They are.
Okay. So there's a,
like, what do you do when you have these characters that are in the public domain?
You just use them.
You use them. And that's what they're doing here.
Well, let me ask you this. Was the Hercules character, did it have, or the Greco-Roman gods, did they have their own issues or line in Marvel's?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So there's a whole they bring in the Greco-Roman gods. There's the gods of Asgard and essentially the Norse gods. And they were able to just, the thing you got to know about these comics back, especially in the 60s and even before then, you're just churning these things out at such a high pace. And, the
like
demand,
pulp novels.
They're pulp novels. Yeah. The demand for these things were so high. So, you needed to just churn and churn and churn. Like there were, Batman had World's Finest, Detective Batman. He appeared in the Justice League. The more characters you had, the more ability you had to just sell and sell and sell. And like nowadays,
does that kind of affect, I don't mean to cut you off, but does that kind of affect your appreciation for characters when they're just watering them down to every single and putting them in and stuff that doesn't make sense in terms of inside of storylines? And, oh, no, that's a different storyline. That's a different story arc. This is not the same world and all this stuff. Does that affect the way you like them?
Yes, it does.
Okay.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Because I think maybe that's why I never got into comic books, and not because I was like, oh, comics for nerds. Yeah. I just was never into them. I probably would be because I love stories, but I think that would bother me.
Maybe you could check out some of our recommended reading.
Those are for me.
That was the difference between the Marvel comics and the DC comics at that time. Marvel, because it was run and created by essentially all the same guys, and in this Marvel, they called it the Marvel bullpen. You just walked out into the floors of Marvel Comics. Great book on the history of that, by the way, and we'll link to it somewhere. They were just, the characters all wanted to interact with each other. They were able to just, go over to say, hey, who's doing what? And so the continuity was a lot more shared than it was over on DC, because the characters had, the Marvel Comics characters, for the most part, aside from Captain America and a few Namor and a few others that were from the 40s, they were mostly all created in this small window in the 60s. Like all the key ones that we know of were in this early 60s.
Are we talking
period.
like the Phase 1 characters, or in terms of the movies, or just all of them, everything that we've seen?
A lot of them. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Right. Spider-Man's in Fantastic Four, all these guys in this.
Black Panther.
Believe so. I'm trying to remember when exactly.
I'm just curious.
That might have been the 70s. But yeah, so DC had no real continuity. They had Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman doing their own thing in their own comics, and then they'd go into World's Finest and do something else, and it wouldn't connect back. Justice League, but you also had Justice Society, who didn't necessarily play well, even though Batman and Superman had been initiated into the Justice Society. It was more older heroes. And so DC used the 80s to kind of bring everything in line together. Crisis on Infinite Earths was their event comic by George Perez and Marv Wolfman. Nowadays, I think it's even harder to get into it. And that's why you'll see like either reboots at the same time a movie comes out.
Okay.
Or they'll do a specific like comic for that movie. It used to be where the issue was, the title of the series was the main thing. The numbering was consistent. So it was always, it was adding up. So, getting into the 900s by the time. So that's a deterrent for a lot of readers. Recently, a lot of comics now are just, they're going more the indie route. So you own that comic for that run. Okay. So one of the recommending ones we have in this, because Clint Barton Hawkeye shows up, is the Hawkeye series by Matt Fraction. It runs 4 trade paperbacks. I forget the total number of issues, but when he's done, it goes to a new #1 in a Hawkeye series.
I gotcha.
And even though a lot of the stories, a lot of the characters, and a lot of characterizations continue, a new creative team had come over and take over, and so it gets a new #1 and new numbering, so that you could pick up from there, and then you could go back and get the old ones. Versus, when I started collecting, I think one of the first comics I had picked up was Nightwing #70, so I had to go backtrack and get the other 69. Then I had, as I continued to collect it going forward, and then you're piecing things together with event comics are usually every year there's a big event series. There was Civil War, Fear Itself, which I know you wanted to touch on.
Oh, right.
And a few other things. Like that's the big summer or like sort of year-long story. And then from the regular weekly issues or monthly issues that are coming out, they tie in different pieces. So it is a deterrent, I think, to some people. And I think the comic industry has tried to do the best it can to refocus and still tell great stories, because I love the stories they tell, but able to make it a little bit more open.
Gotcha. Yeah. Palatable to maybe casual,
especially as comic books and superheroes are they're the biggest pop culture thing in the world.
It's no longer a select group of society that's
into superheroes.
Reading them. You want to kind of tap into that mainstream and kind of keep them there. All right. So you talked about Fear Itself, because we haven't talked about the Destroyer at all. And that's the whatever, that creature that comes out and is protecting all the ancient artifacts that are in Thor's dungeon vault thing. I don't think that's the actual name of it, but that's what I'm calling it. So that Destroyer armor was acquired by Tony Stark in Fear Itself. Talk about what is Fear Itself, I guess, so for the layperson as myself.
Like a real quick overview of it. Fear Itself was an event comic that took place in the Marvel Universe, and it dealt with the superheroes of the MCU, Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, and just about everybody else, Spider-Man, fighting with the lost brother of Odin, Serpent, who's this god of fear who actually claims the right to the Asgardian throne. Their reviews are a little bit mixed. It was written by Matt Fraction. There ends up being a showdown between Serpent, those that are deemed the mighty. In it, though, Tony starts building these weapons and other things for the heroes to use to face down against these villains. He doesn't obtain the Destroyer armor. He takes his, at the time, what they called the Bleeding Edge armor, which was attached to his bones, essentially. And he drops himself into a vat of molten, what they called Uru. Uru metal is the same metal that's used to forge Thor's hammer. And so he just dives into it. And when he comes out, he has the look of the Destroyer.
Okay. All right.
So the hammer and the Destroyer are made up of the same thing, and that Tony is able to do it. Odin provides some magic protection for this armor.
Provide some magic here.
He provides some magic. So once they save the day, because superheroes, of course they do, Tony's able to expel this metal from him, and Odin takes away the magic.
So he only needs it for...
He only uses it for this. Yeah.
Okay. That's interesting. All right. I'm satisfied there. Yeah. So we talked about Clint Barrow, Hawkeye. He's introduced in this movie really quickly. Is there any connection to him in Thor in the comics?
Yes. I mean, they're...
Same idea? Same thing that they showed here? Or they're
Avengers. I mean, they cross paths on the Avengers.
Well, I guess I meant more like in Thor's personal comic series run.
Not quite like this. The version that they use, I don't know if we've talked about the Ultimate Universe and the differences between the Marvel Universe. I know we touched on it in our
I have a note here about his armor. Thor's armor is a combination of his costume from the mainstream Marvel continuity and the Ultimate Marvel Comics universe. So if you want to get into that, go ahead.
So I'll do a quick overview.
Are they ever quick, Pat? Are they ever quick?
They're never quick. They're never quick. I say quick a lot, but they're never quick. I'm going to do a long story about the Ultimate Universe.
Gather around, folks.
Gather around to the fire pit, kids. Here we go.
Welcome to hour 2 of the Thor episode for Another MCU Podcast.
So most of the events that take place in the Marvel Comics universe proper take place on what's known in the universe known as Earth 616. There's also the Ultimate Universe, which is 1610. Numbers aren't important. Just
interesting.
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
You're already blown my mind.
In an effort to make comics more inviting, more acceptable for, readers who hadn't been collecting for years and years, they launched the Ultimate Universe. Brian Michael Bendis had launched Ultimate Spider-Man. Mark Millar on The Ultimates, which was essentially a take on the Avengers. They provided them with some updated origins, new reasons behind the tech and the weapons that they use, and just tried to drive a harder continuity and more, a better launching point for new readers. It took a little bit more of an updated, like more adult tone in some cases. First off, let me just jump back to Clint Barton, Hawkeye. They lean a lot heavily on his Ultimates version, where he's more of a mercenary shield agent, and so that's what we see him in here.
Yeah,
that he's working with Coulson. He's the one up in the cherry picker with the bow and arrow. For those that don't,
I feel like that's tossed in there to just kind of like get people to be like, oh, that's Hawkeye, and then he goes, and it's not. That's all.
Yeah, I mean, you could easily put just a guy with a sniper rifle up there, but because Marvel's building this universe, they said, let's go grab a character. Yeah,
I get you.
Hawkeye in the mainstream comics, a little bit more of the butt of a joke. He actually joined the second iteration of the Avengers with Captain America after the main team had all quit. Eventually, him and Thor get on the same team. You know, it's comics. People come and go on these teams. I touched a little bit on recent issues, but the Matt Fraction series of Hawkeye, he's really risen to kind of critical prominence because it's showing what, you know, as an Avenger without superpowers, kind of what he does on his days off and what he does at home.
Chop wood.
Yeah, not quite. He is the superintendent of a building in New York. It's
why would you want that job?
It's actually a really good series. I'm sure I'm going to say a lot of stuff that you're just going to laugh at. Like, one story is told completely from the point of view of his dog.
You're correct.
They have another one that's told mostly in American Sign Language because Hawkeye in the mainstream comics is partially deaf.
Okay.
So
interesting.
The mainstream Hawkeye he's a carny. He's raised by him and his brother run away. His brother Barney Barton. Great name.
Oh, it's Barton or Barrow?
Barton.
Oh, why do I have Barrow down here? All right. Go ahead.
They're raised in a circus. Initially, he was a villain because he was trained by the swordsman. And then he quickly.
Carny folks are evil.
Yeah, carny folks are evil. We've all seen, what was that season of American Horror Story?
I didn't see that one, but yes.
Eventually turns a new leaf and joins the Avengers. But so he's, they steal bits and pieces of him. In later versions of the MCU Hawkeye, he gets a little bit more of that humor, a little bit more of that, like especially the scene in Civil War when he goes to save Scarlet Witch. They start to borrow a little bit more from the new version of the comics than the Ultimates version.
Okay.
But there's still pieces here and there of that. As far as Thor's look goes with the Ultimates, Thor is actually known as Thorfield.
Come on.
Yeah,
that's like he has a last name.
Yeah, he's a little bit more. I believe
like
he's
my last name. Am I related? Hold on. Am I related to Thor?
Are you son of Thor?
Yes.
Field, son of Thor.
I've always thought I've had some kind of special powers.
I believe he was sort of a mental patient in that one, so they get a little bit of that in this film.
Can you see why Thor is not one of my ones I like?
Yeah. So he actually gets this mechanical suit that straps on. So he's got those like 6 dots down his chest, and it provides him with flight and superpowers and a connection to his hammer, which has a little bit more look of Stormbreaker than it does Mjolnir. Stormbreaker we'll touch on in Endgame. Mm-hmm. Whereas the one in the movie, the one in the comic, looks like he's straight out of a Renaissance fair.
Okay.
And so they take the two and they kind of steal the look, but it very much draws, I think it does, draws inspiration from Olivier Coipel's designs from Thor, which was a new series launched in 2007. So, if you see that picture, it kind of lines up.
Okay.
The only thing missing is the helmet. Mm-hmm. And we get the helmet in Ragnarok, but more as a Easter egg than anything.
Yeah.
And I think that was one thing that fans initially took issue with was Thor doesn't have a helmet.
Oh, for God's sakes.
Yeah. It's like, because
that's fine.
You're not going to hide your main character's face like that.
I know. I mean, Chris Hemsworth is a chisel at a rock for crying out loud.
But I say that, and then we go to the next movie, and Chris Hemsworth's head is covered completely by the helmet.
Oh, caving. All right, so I want to go through the artifacts in the vault.
Yes.
Now, I'm going to list them, and I want you to tell me quickly what they are, what they do. Okay. Now, I'm not going to... We already know...
Lightning round.
Yeah, we already know that the Infinity Gauntlet was in there. And then they say it's fake.
It's easier to say it's fake than it is to say
that's fine, that he stole
Thor comes in and steals it.
Right. So I've got them listed here. You tell me what they do or what they are real quickly. So the Tablet of Life and Time.
I have no idea.
Really? The Eye of Agamotto.
So the Eye of Agamotto, I didn't even realize it was in there because that's what Doctor Strange uses.
Okay.
That's
this is again, this is online.
That's his necklace.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, that's his centerpiece there that he uses to hide the time stone.
Okay.
And it has magical powers and mystical powers.
So we're going to say that's probably a fake too. That's right?
Probably
okay.
a fake.
Warlock's eye.
I don't know if that is related to just a random Warlock's eye or the character Warlock.
Do you understand that you were brought onto this podcast to give me knowledge on comics?
You got to give me warning about these things.
I thought I sent this one to you.
No.
Oh, that's fine. You know what? This works even better then. Now, the Eternal Flame. I know it's in Thor 3. So the Eternal Flame.
What is that? The one to hire Searcher?
I don't know.
Sortor?
I don't, man.
Yeah.
We're not that. Okay.
Yeah.
Casket of Ancient Winters.
Isn't that the thing that's the MacGuffin in this one?
That's one he holds.
Yeah,
okay,
that's the one that they use this whole.
That was it. That was the last
Yeah.
one. All right. Man, you really disappointed
it's also
me. Go ahead.
that one I do know because you wanted to know about the Cosmic Cube, but I'm not going to talk about the Cosmic Cube this time because we're going to talk about the Cosmic Cube next time.
Okay.
On Thor.
Okay.
I'm Captain America: The First Avenger.
Okay, that's fine.
The Casket of Ancient Winters,
Is
aka Fimble Winter, aka hashtag Fimble Winter is coming, is a Game of Thrones like winter in a box.
Which so that's what he's using to shoot everything, to freeze everyone. Okay.
Yeah.
So and the Tesseract's inside that, right?
No, the Tesseract's are completely.
That's not even. I thought the Tesseract was inside that.
No. Tesseract's completely different. They don't have the Tesseract
until the mid-credit scene.
The casket wasn't the only thing you took from Jotunheim that day, was it?
No. In the aftermath of the battle, I went into the temple and I found a baby. Small for a giant's offspring. Abandoned, suffering, left to die. Alfie's son.
Okay, well, how about this? Do you want to go into its role in the MCU?
Yeah.
Let's get into that.
Yeah.
So we'll probably still talk about comics, but
yeah.
All right. So I guess my first question is, they show in the mid-credit scene or the end credit scene, thankfully, post-credit scene, thankfully they graduate to mid-credit scene at some point because
there's only one in this one, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, there's only one. He opens up because the character that Stellan Skarsgård plays, Eric Selvig, is in throughout, possessed by Loki, apparently. Whatever. My question is, where did they get the Tesseract from? When he opens it up and he shows them, I thought that was from the Winter Box thing.
No, that was from.
But you never see it till in this movie.
But then we see it in the next movie. We see it in Captain America.
Well, that's
First
what
Avenger.
that's the note I hear.
That
The Norwegian village of Tonsberg, where they show that in the beginning.
Yeah,
that's where Red Skull gets the Tesseract from. So that's what you're supposed to.
So
assume.
it does come from Asgard.
So are we saying that Captain America happens before Thor? All of Captain America.
All of Captain America happens.
That makes sense. Tim.
All of the MCU.
Yeah.
However, I believe in the early parts of the First Avenger, they talk about how the Cosmic Cube did find its way from Earth down. So whatever piece happens there, and I need to go rewatch First Avenger because I'm trying to remember what happened.
That's next week.
Yeah. That makes its way into Earth. So from wherever it's from, it comes down way much prior to the events of Captain America.
Okay. Well, that makes sense then, I guess.
I think that the scenes in the beginning of Thor actually take place well before. I think they say it's something like 900 AD.
When they
fight the frost giants initially, and Odin wins and steals Loki away. Yeah, that whole thing.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Because that I think they were trying to tie into actual Norwegian and Norse mythology time frame of when some of that stuff found its way into Earth.
Right. And you also have the first MCU movie now that is off-world.
Yes.
And deals with, and there's an awful, there's just some acceptance to the fact that he's off-world and everyone's like, yeah, all right. And I get that, thinking back, that it doesn't blow Coulson away or doesn't blow Nick Fury away, because you know that they met Captain Marvel. Right. You know what I mean? So
they have the scrolls from that movie.
So
yeah.
They know all this. So but I mean, we don't know this when we're watching Thor, so we don't assume that. And I wonder if that was a conversation where, like, you already know there's people off world.
Yeah, I don't know when some of that time frame works out.
I'm just wondering if the conversation when they put this together and they're talking to the actors,
talking to Sam Jackson, and
listen, there's stuff coming up that we want to do that you already are aware of.
Yeah,
I'm wondering if that
You know all.
Yeah, exactly. So don't ever be surprised about things. We talked briefly about Hawkeye.
Yeah. So we get major introduction of essentially 3 characters.
Yep.
3, like aside from Thor, 3 characters that play a role
that carry through.
Yep. And one being Hawkeye, which what I really found interesting was Hawkeye kind of maintains when we next see Hawkeye in Avengers, and when we see him, he's working security and surveillance for Selvig's tests on the Tesseract. So he kind of maintains his mission, this mission with Selvig, the mission with Thor and Asgardian, whatever.
Well, I would assume that with the timeline that this is Avengers is pretty much close to the end of Thor.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But I guess Black Widow had finished her mission with Tony Stark, and the next time we see her, she's recruiting Hulk. So, I like that they kind of kept that continuity between what these characters are doing or what they're not doing, depending on, how things went. So, and then obviously we have Loki and Selvig, Selvig making appearances in Avengers 2 and Thor,
and of course
Thor Dark World
and Sitwell.
And Sitwell. Yeah. So Shield's back.
Right. So the end of the last movie, Coulson went to go find the hammer. And what does it say about the writer's viewpoints of Americans that when the hammer lands in the middle of the desert, the first thing everyone's going to do is go get some beer, cooking up hot dogs and hamburgers and try to yank it out of it. I mean, it's just like
entrepreneurial. It's entrepreneurial.
How pathetic are we?
I thought that was fantastic. When there's a Bud Light going. Yeah. I mean, I thought that was fantastic.
When the guy's like cooking the burgers, I'm like, come on, man. Yeah, I'm making some burgers. Yeah, try to pull that hammer.
I thought that was great. Ignore his point of view. I thought that was a great scene.
They took over this entire town, which I should have brought this up when we were talking about the movie itself. This is the same set from Silverado.
Oh, is it?
The Kevin Costner movie, yeah. The guns. If you've never seen Silverado, it's directed by Lawrence Kasdan. It's a really fun movie. It's like a Western movie, but it's more little. I guess it's a little, I don't say updated, but it's not as dry. It's good. It's really good. But this entire town was constructed, and it's from the set of Silverado. So that I should have put that in the earlier one, but I'm telling you now.
That's a fun fact. Hashtag fun fact.
There you go. That's what I'm about. Fun facts.
Fields fun facts.
Ooh, interesting. I should trademark that maybe.
Patent it.
So and then I know I talked about when we went through the artifacts. And we briefly touched about how the gauntlet's fake, but then that eternal flame shows up in Thor 3.
Ragnarok.
I feel like they put a lot of that stuff in there, and they just had it to be cool. It's in there, and then they
I think it was Easter eggs.
Use it. Yeah,
this is going to get fans jazzed.
Do you think they tried to put more Easter eggs in this one than maybe the past ones that we watched? Because, like we said, Iron Man 2 has a lot more stuff in terms of the universe building than this one does.
Well, and that's the problem with the Thor movies is they don't really touch on a lot of the unit, like they operate in their own separate world for a good chunk. Like Dark World, it's this world ending, destroying London, and nobody shows up.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, Thor Ragnarok is almost complete. You have Hulk, obviously, but
it's off another planet.
It's completely off planet.
Yeah. But I think they also do that because when your Guardians come out, Guardians is another series that's off planet pretty much. So it makes sense that they should connect those two, and they kind of do.
They do,
But so that makes sense. But then you have Captain Marvel, which I'm curious because we've only seen one Captain Marvel movie. If the second movie will include maybe some stuff with Thor. I mean, I'm curious because I know that we're talking about Thor, the first one. Well, we all know what has happened to him in the last one in Endgame. I'm wondering he's done? Like, that's it?
He's coming back.
Is he coming back?
The Chris Hemsworth is coming back. Taika Waititi had, they said, okay, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do another one.
We're just on the cusp of them saying they're talking to Christian Bale to come back.
Which, if they get Christian Bale, they got everybody.
Well, they still haven't gotten Keanu Reeves. Well, no, they did, right?
I think they did.
Man, don't take John Wick.
Yeah, so this one is disconnected from a lot of the greater Marvel one. I mean, S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up, as we know. Sitwell's in there. He, makes random appearances here and there between now and Winter Soldier.
Do you think they knew he was going to be Hydra?
I don't know when that decision was made.
See, I'm wondering, like, all these, what happens, how far back the Genesis came.
Yeah, that would be I'd love to get that question too.
I don't know how you'd have to ask for interviews.
Maybe when Kevin Feige's done, he'll write a book.
Will they ever be done? I don't think these will ever be done.
Well, the thing that I didn't understand is, and I'm not sure if they they knew how it was going to eventually play. Speaking of the Genesis, is Selvig in that final teaser scene,
The post-credit scene
where it looks like he's controlled by Loki. But then when we get to the opening of Avengers, when Loki comes through the portal, he takes control of Selvig. Like he actively has to take control of Selvig.
Yeah, I didn't get that. So like when he lets go of the Bifrost Bridge, when Thor destroys it, you're assuming that he's traveling down to Earth.
I don't know where I'm assuming he's traveling or eventually finds his way to like Thanos' weird like asteroid castle thing.
So he's not but how is he talking to Selvig?
Maybe the same way that he talked to Thor when Thor was in.
Okay, so
captured.
he's just somewhere and he's
doing
connected.
magic.
They never really kind of explain Loki's magic. He does something, it's magic.
Yeah.
And they don't explain like what it's from or how he has that or how powerful he is.
I believe in the comics, he was initially introduced as the god of evil.
Okay.
And in Norse mythology, he's known as the trickster god.
Yeah. Okay.
And we see some of his powers where he's able to form copies of himself, illusions.
I mean, I get it. I don't need to hear his limitations but it's just kind of like, again, maybe that's because they have him in the post-credit scene. Do you think that at some point during the production of Thor, when they did Thor, because the post-credit scene is directed by Johnston.
Oh, is it?
I believe so. It's not directed by Branagh.
That's a weird.
Well, that's what they did the last one. The last Thor one, the one that was in the end of Iron Man 2 was directed by Branagh. So they're directed by the next
director.
Yeah. I'm wondering if they knew that, like, okay, we're going to carry Loki through
into at least Avengers.
So let's throw him in this scene to get, they probably wanted to introduce the Tesseract because they knew that they had Captain America coming up.
And then they wanted the villain, a new, like, I think they wanted to bring Loki back. I think they had to.
You can't do the Red Skull there, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You wanted to, because the Red Skull wasn't going to be, because Captain America comes out 2 months later. So they already knew the plot line.
Yeah, no. I wonder, maybe they did then already.
Yeah, so I'm thinking when they're plotting Thor out, they probably knew that Loki would be the one to be the villain in the Avengers.
He's the villain they know, but he is kind of a representative of the villain that
the bigger villain.
Right. And they do that a couple times throughout the series. Yeah. They do kind of like, they have like, it's almost like mini boss levels in video games.
It's like a video game.
Yeah. Oh, what does that say? So there's really not, like we talked about last time, again, I'll repeat it, that Iron Man 2 did a lot to set up the universe moving forward with S.H.I.E.L.D. and just everything to the detriment of the story. This one, it's probably got a better balance. I don't think it was detrimental to the story of Thor in and of itself. I think the story did all that on its own. It's tough because you go into that theater and you're seeing a superhero action film and you're getting Shakespearean drama. And while I appreciate that as a writer and as somebody who likes Shakespeare and loves stories, and I'm a big fan of Kenneth Branagh directing and writing and acting, it's just that's not what you expect going in. That kind of movie. And I mean, I'm surprised. I think it made its money because it's Thor and they were like, oh my God, all these movies are coming, and Captain America was the net in 2 months, and I'm sure they wanted to watch this before Captain America. Mm-hmm. I mean, I think maybe you start having people like, oh, what's the end credit scene going to be? What's the end credit scene going to be? And because that basically becomes a thing where
absolutely, and then everybody else tried to copy it.
Right, exactly.
Wish I went back and did in prep for this one was find the original teasers and the trailers just to see how they pitched it and see if it was a little bit, did they put all the action in the trailer? Did they maybe did they put some of the funny comedy moments? Like, how did they try to market this one? And does it sit well
pun intended.
Does it work next to the final product?
That would have been good prep work. Nice job. Nice way to drop the ball here. Do you have anything else that you want to add, or? I think we all said about Thor.
I just wish that, Agent Sitwell was related to Sally Sitwell.
Oh, that would have been cool.
From Arrested Development.
Yes.
Not in the know.
Oh, that would have been maybe in our world it is, Pat.
And then the Booth family is part of the MCU because they need everybody.
Yeah. So So next week, two things. Next week, we're going to we'll have our Captain America episode, and that's actually it's not gonna just be me and Pat. It's gonna be my other partner, Mike Butler, who we do a podcast, which I've mentioned before, called Forgotten Cinema, where we highlight one movie every week that maybe people don't talk about a lot anymore, whether they're old or new, and Pat's a big fan of that. So he is. So
I am.
We do. So Mike's going to come on because Captain America is one of his favorite. I think it's his favorite MCU movie. I know he really likes it. So we're trying to get him on here just to kind of like, not just me and Pat talking. So I thought that'd be cool.
We want somebody who's going to have a good opinion about these movies.
Oh, we do. This is true. We do have good opinions.
I do.
Shut up. I have a good. I'm getting a bad rap here. But anyways. So Mike Butler will be joining us next week at Captain America. So stick around. Don't hit stop yet, because now Pat's going to give you some recommended reading options based upon what we talked about here for Thor. And that's it. I'm going to sign off. So thanks for listening. Pat, take it away. As always, at the end of each episode, we like to send you home with some recommended reading that follows up on some of the characters and plots presented in this week's film. Our recommended reading section is sponsored by Infinite Heroes, comics, cards, and collectibles in Watertown, Connecticut. If you're in the Connecticut or New England area, it's a great location to pick up comics from Marvel, as well as DC, Image, and more. They also have a large collection of trading cards, toys, and collectibles. Owner Paul Santos has worked in comics for years, most recently as an editor at DC Comics. Ask him for a recommendation and tell him we sent you.
So this week we journey to Asgard with Thor Odinson and the gang for some recommended reading. No Thor reading list would be complete without a story by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. You could pick up Thor Epic Collection, The God of Thunder, where you'll get a look into the origins of the character, which, as we talked about, differ in some respects to the film. That's the initial introduction to the character. This volume actually collects over 25 issues of Thor's run in Tales of Suspense, and also Kirby's back matter Tales of Asgard collection. We get to meet Donald Blake, Loki, Heimdall, and explore Asgard really through Kirby's beautiful pencils. Next up, we mentioned this one already, but the J. Michael Straczynski run with artist Olivier Coipel. They returned Thor to the modern MCU after he had been gone for a while. In Thor Volume 1 from the mid-2000s, 2007, Donald Blake returns, helps Thor return from the void of nothingness, whatever that means. And we see our hammer-wielding hero settle in New Asgard in Oklahoma. Yes, Oklahoma. So again, it kind of retains some of that fish out of water feel that the movie did. And then lastly, we have The Mighty Thor by Matt Fraction, art also by Coipel. Thor partners with Lady Sif as they start to track down magical world tree MacGuffins and face down with the Fantastic Four villain Galactus. In addition to Fraction's run on Thor, I'd really be remiss if I didn't recommend the Hawkeye run that we had mentioned a couple times here. It's Hawkeye on his day off, essentially, from the Avengers. So start with Volume 1, My Life as a Weapon, and then just continue to follow the adventures of Hawkeye, Pizza Dog, and a whole bunch of vampires in tracksuits. And that's it. Happy reading, and we'll see you next week.